Hi, I'm Pastor Lew here with Jenn, my awesome wife, and we do hope you're well. Why is racism still a thing in this country? I can't help but think one of the reasons is because we as a church, we as a larger community of people who have a heart just haven't done enough. And then I started thinking about it, and I can't help but think that I individually have not done enough. And, I prayed last night for forgiveness. I just think I have been too easy. It's difficult when, you want to be friendly to everybody, and I don't have any personal relationship problems with people of color in my own life, but that doesn't get it done. There's still racism. There's still people that are abusive of power, and so often that is focused on people who are minorities, people of color, and so forth.
Yeah. I feel like with this most recent incident, being so particularly heinous, there is a cry going out, for sure, across our country, from people that are systemically and generationally oppressed for their freedom. And I just wonder how far they're going to allow themselves to be pushed before they really push back. I think we're seeing a lot right now with the protests, though they have been highly infiltrated by white supremacist groups.
To try to disrupt and try to blame.
Or they will start the looting, the looting and the rioting, and then tuck tail and run and leave the police to beat up the people that were otherwise just trying to be heard. I think there is a lot of groaning right now collectively around the world, in our country, maybe more than anywhere else in the world, a real deep longing for breath, for voice, for freedom. And I think that we, as white people who long to be allies, we want to help, we have to start doing more than just sitting there and saying, gosh, this isn't right. There are things, there's got to be things that we can do to help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we're going to be working on that. We're going to, we need to get more involved, and we will. And one of the things we're talking about, we are so interconnected, and that's one of the things that we've talked about over and over again in our peaceful moments, that we are so interconnected. When one of us hurts, we all hurt. And it is not right. I caught myself the other day talking about, I really support their cause, but it's not their cause. It is our cause. It is my cause. When I see George Floyd, and I didn't see the video, but when I hear about that awful thing, well, we both cried. I mean, it's awful, and it's one of us. And yet it's the people who are labeled in a minority that seems to be subjected to the worst part of that. I mean, we're hurt by it, but honestly, that's kind of an indirect consequence.
Right.
I cannot imagine what it would be like to have to fear walking down the street just because you're black, or just because whatever. And that's
where you live.
Crazy. Where you live, that's crazy.
Or where you look like you might live.
Yeah.
It is something, and I think for both of us it was a stark reality. Caleb walked into the room. He had been outside playing, and I had just seen what had happened about an hour after it had happened in Minneapolis, and I was weeping uncontrollably. And Caleb came in and he was very upset and he needed to know what was going on, and I didn't know how to tell him. I didn't know how to talk to him. I didn't know what to say to him. All I can think even now is I shouldn't have to tell my 8-year-old that this happened, that somebody brutally, ruthlessly killed another human for no other reason than the color of his skin. That they would kill them brutally and ruthlessly at all is one thing, but if it's for that, even more heinous than I can imagine. And as a white person, I have spent some time, not enough, but some time, researching the idea of what is white privilege. This is a big term that gets thrown around a lot, and I know a lot of people get offended, but I'm not privileged. I have. You are. And recognizing that as not a condemnation of you, but as a fact and a state of being, and then figuring out how I can use that privilege or release that privilege to help people that don't have a voice, that have been ravaged for centuries.
Yeah.
Ravaged for centuries.
For centuries. And, you know, it smacks of a basic systemic problem, as Jen alluded to a moment ago, but it also speaks of the darkness of some human hearts. And not everybody is hateful. Not everybody would do such a thing. And so there's like this twin sin on our land. One is a collective, and one is the existence of such individual awfulness.
Yeah.
But the other thing, you mentioned white privilege. And even in this case, though, I can't even see this as a privilege. This ought to be a basic, fundamental right to be able to go to a mall and expect to live. It's just crazy. It's not like that's so fundamental. And that fundamental right for safety and protection from a police department was not only violated, but it was reversed and turned into a crime itself.
Yeah. So we see a lot of acting out right now. We see people protesting, and for the large part, it is peaceful protesting. These are people that just want to be heard, and we should be standing with them. And in several cities, like Flint, Michigan, the police are laying down their arms and walking with their citizens and listening and starting to have real needed conversations. And in other places, we see things like here in Lansing, where we are right now, we see tear gas and rubber bullets and inciting of violence. And I can't blame the people for raging, even though I'm an extremely nonviolent person, and it breaks my heart, but I also can't fault them for it, because if I had to worry every time you left the house that for whatever reason, or every time Caleb left the house that for whatever reason you might not come home because you're white, I would be raging.
Yeah. So we have a sin we are confronted with, and we as a church need to be active. Now, speaking to my beloved congregation, it is a different thing living in Shawano, Wisconsin than it is living in Lansing, or where I used to live in Flint, Michigan, or
even Milwaukee or Green Bay.
It is different, but we have to find something we can do. and we will. So, with Jen, this is Pastor Lew, and we wish you health and safety, but also let's get involved.
Amen.